Hello and welcome to our first guest in this new podcast called The Shaman and the Philosopher. And today we are discussing ideas with Vincent, who has done very interesting research into Mount Pikash and he's been in contact with a lot of institutions. It hasn't been easy for him to access this material and keep on researching it, lots of barriers along the way, but I think we'll get a pretty good presentation and new updates from his work. So before I would just say hello to my co-presenter. Hi Jason, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you? And
Good morning, Ricardo. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, Jason Huffman. You can find me screen name Shaman711. That's going to carry you across YouTube, X, and Rumble. On X, put a underscore after the Shaman711. I'm excited to be here, dude. Vince, thank you so much for taking your time to sit here and give this to us firsthand. I know there are certain areas where our research sort of overlaps, meaning vaguely just the Native Americans and a little brush with Hernando de Soto. So personally, I'm just excited and grateful, man, to be able to see this from you firsthand this morning.
Thank you for having me, and it's so great to be here to speak with you and learn from you and share this topic that's been really a hobby and a passion, a mystery for years that I've been just researching, and I'm so glad to have a chance to talk about it.
Awesome. So before you start your presentation, will you just tell everybody where they can find you, Vincent?
And I'm located in Georgia, along the coast, and I I'm going to be available on um, X and also online. If anyone wants, I can share my contact info.
We'll put it on the description.
Okay.
We'll put every link that you send us. So
Thank you.
we're ready.
Don't give them your address, Vince, because then they're going to try to find you to get to Ricardo. He's got quite the growing fan base, and we're not responsible for their
Of
actions.
course, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So take it away, Vincent.
All
All
right.
lines
So
with it.
I guess on the screen is that on
Yeah, we
the
can see it.
display?
Yeah.
Anyone can see that? Okay. All right. So this is the topic about Mount Pisgah or Pisgah, uh, North Carolina in Haywood County, and this is a set of mounds. There were actually about five mounds on the site when the first Europeans showed up. I guess it was De Soto. We'll get into more details along the timeline, but the mound here shown on this picture is the current excavation plan and what they found there after it was excavated. They found a twin set of mounds that were oriented north-south, and it was earth lodges with a passageway connecting the two square earth lodges. In the northernmost earth lodge, there was a sub earth pit, and this earth lodge contained a hollowed out chamber, so people could sit in there. There were actually seating arrangements made in the lodge so that they could sit down around the central fire. And so this in the middle is believed to be the fire pit, and it has a passageway for oxygen, and air could come in from one side to the other, which was really an ingenious way they could keep the carbon monoxide flowing out of the earth lodge and have a fire. And so they found that this subterranean passageway connected all the way out from the outside of the mound, underneath the mound, and through the fire pit. And when when they excavated this, they found it was connected with a passageway. So it had two earth lodges that were side by side, and the mound was excavated beginning in 1879, and it had many stages of archaeological study there, all the way up to the present day, and it's called the Garden Creek site, Mount Pisgah. So we have some interesting developments lately. These are some of the main updates. This is the Smithsonian at the
Vince,
time in 1883.
Vince,
Yes.
before you move on, real quick question about that first picture. Those two earth lodges, then from above, that looks like the image I might see of what we call a platform mound. Was that the effect? Were these structures indeed up and two different levels,
Yes,
or?
these were actually two like side by side platform mounds and
Right.
a like a pyramid shape on the top of
Right.
each one. So there were two mounds pointed at the top with a passageway, a flat platform between the two.
Between the two, that's so wild.
And since we are here, could you tell us if there is any astronomical alignments?
Well, absolutely, you see it's north south aligned. So this was constructed very meticulously from the beginning to be oriented with the North Star, and the alignments are very important to the site. This site is directly west of the Dorchak site and Hardaway in North Carolina, which we know are very important. I'll talk more about those later. And it's also at a 45-degree angle to the Judicala Rock in North Carolina. So the Judicala Rock is about 1 day's travel away, and it's at a 45-degree angle to the southwest of the site. And then the Hardaway and Dorchak sites are east of the site. So it's a solstice alignment. I mean, it's an equinox alignment to the Dorchak and Hardaway side from here. It's on the east-west axis for the equinox. I think this was very carefully chosen as an important site. There's evidence that it's been around since at least 8,000 BC, possibly even much earlier. And some of the things that they found in the mound could be even 30,000 BC time frame. It was filled with figurines and carvings that were just amazing, and the biggest collection of artifacts in the East Coast from this country were found there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the astronomical alignments are really important. They were built into the site.
And do you know how high do archaeologists know how high it used to be?
He said it was about 25 feet tall on both of the temples, and then the 15 feet platform in between the two.
Wow.
It was a very tall mound. I mean, this is a substantial earthwork.
So
and,
it would be around 45 to 50 feet high, all of it.
no, I mean 25 feet to the top of the pyramid with a 15-foot platform.
Okay. You're
was in
including it
between
already.
them.
Okay.
I'm including that.
It's like a structure, is what I'm getting from it. It's a mound as we label it, right? But it also seems to be a structure.
Right, it's a structure, and it was actually built down into the earth as an earth
Right.
lodge.
Right.
I mean, these were hollowed out chambers or built with enough room to walk around in. So it was a real earth lodge
Yeah.
connected
It's
with the
beautiful.
passageway.
Okay. We'll hinder you no longer. Carry on.
Okay, no, that's all right. So some of the exciting things, the Smithsonian. Well, recently there's been an audit at the Smithsonian, and this was demanded by the president. They said, "Hey, well, we want you to audit your exhibits." The Smithsonian refused, and now they're on furlough. The employees are not working at the Smithsonian currently. That's what's going on now at the Smithsonian. This happened this year, but back in 1883, when they found the site, actually they found it in 1880, and then in 1883, the archaeologist named Emmer was hired to come on site.
I can't see you right here.
Okay, can I go hang out with Cam?
Yeah.
And he did about 2 months of excavations at the site. They found over 1,500 artifacts there, and they found axes and celts and spear points, copper, and they had written in the annual report about the Smithsonian from 1883. They even found copper that had machine signs embedded in the surfaces of the copper. So they assumed it was European copper. So that's
The copper raises its head again, Ricardo.
Yes. But in this case, you are telling me that there was copper from the old world in this site.
right. That's what the report of the Smithsonian said. This is European Old World copper in this mound, and they said it could be from European contact.
And has any of them tested that copper? You don't know.
Don't know, not that I know of.
Okay.
And that was because of the machining type marks on the copper pieces?
Right, because they said it was machined.
So it could have been machined on this side, or no?
Right, I mean that's possible, and I don't know. I mean it's a mystery whether it was they had the capability to machine it in America or if it actually did come from Europe. I mean I think it's kind of Eurocentric to claim that they didn't know how to machine copper, but it's important that to know that they found metal tools in this mound and they found lead bullets, and so they had metal working ability.
Is this where the DeSoto connection comes in with the bullets, or
Yeah.
the bullets?
Yes.
No. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main things about the mound is DeSoto went in the mound and shot bullet rounds off. Those bullets were
Of course
found,
he did.
and he was trying to shoot these because he wanted to shoot the skeletons and the artifacts in the mound to just desecrate them. Essentially, it was like he was doing this because it was an attack on the religion of the natives, and he was specifically targeting this mound because it was the ancestor shrine and it was a critically important religious center.
For
So he attacked
for
it
multiple
first.
nations, right? Because
Right.
this is not
Absolutely.
a
For
one
multiple-
nation site. It was a multiple indigenous nation site. It was one of the rare peace centers where everyone get along with
Yes.
each other.
Yes, absolutely. This was the peace center. Many nations came together. The Ho Chunk, there's evidence of the Iroquois coming there, the Creek, Muskogee, even the Yuchi. And that's what I wanted to talk about. The latest article that came through from, like you mentioned, the Cherokee chief, and this was called Not So Cherokee. Well, we know now that the artifacts from this mound were claimed by NAGPRA under the Eastern Band of Cherokee. The Eastern Band of Cherokee wrote this 1999 claim to NAGPRA saying, hey, these are our artifacts, we're repatriating them. So they took the artifacts, and some of them included wampum belts. They found 28 wampum belts in this mound. It's more than any other wampum belt discovery in, as far as I know, in the world. It's these wampum belts are sacred objects. They represent peace, and they're heraldic. I mean, they show their totems or symbols on the wampum belts that are designed in the wampum beads. So
would this be 28 years of ceremonies, or it doesn't represent? It's not one a year. It is.
Well, it's unclear whether each one was for a different year, but the 28 wampum belts were in the mound. I tried getting pictures of them. They haven't agreed to let me take pictures yet, so I'm not sure. Other than the fact that they found them there, and they were at the University of North Carolina.
And do you know any reason why the East Band of the Cherokee would reclaim these artifacts?
And well, I think it's because it was on Cherokee land, what is now Cherokee land. So they said since this was on Cherokee land, these are our artifacts. They repatriated them in 1999. So this well-written article, I was fortunate enough to receive a response from the Cherokee chief and the Yuchi chief about this, and I think it would be worth reading if you don't mind.
Sure, of course.
Just go through it
Yeah,
and read it.
please.
Not So Cherokee, 1520 to 1685. The claim that Cherokee were always here is one of the most repeated myths in Southeastern history. Families today echo it, saying, "We are Cherokee," without question. The claim ties the land, rivers, and mountains to one people, as if by right of ancient time. But the archaeological and historical records speak otherwise. The soil itself testifies against the myth of always Cherokee. The mounds rise as witnesses, built by the hands long before the Cherokee. The Spanish chroniclers never recorded a Cherokee when they traveled through. Instead, they wrote of Jawara, Kofitacheke, Chiaha, Gitari, and Zawala. Pottery shards, burial mounds, and towns with non-Iroquoian names confirm other nations lived here first. The Cherokee came later, arriving as migrants, not as ancient builders.
In the 1500s, Hernando de Soto crossed the southeast seeking gold. His entrada passed through Cofitacheque, Jawara, and Chiaja. None of his chroniclers wrote the name Cherokee. They recorded towns with leaders, plazas, and storehouses. They spoke of ladies who ruled as Arada. They described towns tied by trails to salt, pearls, and copper. These were Mississippian chiefdoms, not Cherokee villages. The Cherokee did not appear in these records because they were not yet there. They came later when disease and collapse had already thinned populations. Their timing coincided with European disruption. The Cherokee carried an Iroquoian tongue from the north. They entered land shaped by Siouan, Yuchi, and Hittichi peoples. They took over towns already emptied or weakened. In doing so, they also took names not their own. Estado, Tugalu, Kituwa were not born from Iroquoian speech. They were earlier words pressed into Cherokee mouths. Naming became an act of power to claim what was not theirs. By stamping old towns with their name, they buried earlier nations. The silence of those names in Cherokee language shows the theft. To forget this is to erase the memory of Jawara, Cofitacheque, and the Suwali. This work is not hatred, it is correction. It lifts up the memory of those who came before. It recalls the women rulers, the Arada, who sat in councils. It remembers the green corn ceremony, the busk kept by Mikos and councils. It restores the picture of a southeastern alive with nations. The Cherokee story begins after these worlds had already risen and fallen. To call Mississippian towns ancestral Cherokee is to misunderstand. Archaeologists once labeled Pishka and Koala as Proto-Cherokee, but similarity of pottery does not prove identity. Pishka and Koala were Mississippian, not Cherokee. Mississippian builders raised mounds from Cahokia to Etowah. Their plazas and temples were centers of life and ceremony. The Cherokee entered centuries later, after 1600. To confuse their late arrival with deep ancestry is an error. It is like judging Kemet only by Napoleon's invasion. Way too late, way too shallow. The mound builders deserve to be remembered as their own. Jawara was real, powerful, and organized long before the word Cherokee. Suwali was a nation with Mikos and Arada and trails binding the world. Their names still rise from the earth for those who know how to hear. When people say Cherokee were always here, they erase 10,000 years of life. Paleo-Indian hunters walked these ridges long before any Iroquoian word was spoken. They left Clovis points buried deep in the valleys. Their camps held roasting fires, stretched hides, and blackened hearths. To them, this land was survival, not myth. The archaic came after, shaping banner stones and soapstone bowls. Families moved in seasonal cycles, spring fishing, hunting, autumn hunts, winter shelter. At Morrow Mountain, they quarried rhyolite for blades. In Sewanna Valley, archaeologists found chert from Tennessee, proof of trade. These people tied the mountains to a wider world. The archaic diet was full: bear, deer, turkey, turtle, fish, acorns, hickory nuts. They domesticated squash, gourd, sunflower, and goosefoot. Eastern North America became one of the world's centers of plant domestication. Long before maize, they shaped a unique agricultural tradition. By 1000 BCE, pottery arrived, cord-marked vessels for cooking and storage. Villages became more permanent. This was the woodland age of burial mounds and ritual. Graves carried copper, shell, mica treasures. Inequality began to show in how people were buried. Some families gained more prestige than others. Trade reached into the Hopewell world. At Garden Creek, figurines, copper beads, and exotic blades surfaced. Western Carolina mica traveled to Ohio and was carved into sacred shapes. Corn appeared by 200 CE, but was slow to spread. Families still leaned on deer, fish, nuts, and squash. Only after 700 CE did maize become dominant. Corn fueled the Mississippian world that followed. Villages became towns, towns became chiefdoms, mounds rose, plazas spread, and stockades circled. This was not wilderness, it was civilization. Cahokia towered over London in size and complexity. Its mounds dwarfed the pyramids of Giza. The Mississippian South stretched from Cahokia to Etowah, Moundville, and Spiro. Religion was tied to corn and fire. Each year, the busk renewed life with new flames and forgiveness. Chiefs called Mikos presided, guided by councils of Arata. Kufidacheke and Gitari were led by women rulers. Spanish chroniclers noted female errata in the mountains as well. Power was balanced between the leaders and councils, not crowned kings. Europeans misunderstood this balance as weakness. Pishka phased towns from 1000 to 1450 CE carried Mississippian patterns. Rectangular houses, plazas, and palisades defined them. Pottery bore stamped designs of high complexity. Burials lay beneath the house floors. Guala phased towns from 1450 CE to 1700 CE followed, shaped by Lamar influences. Yet archaeologists forced Pishka and Kuala into a Cherokee box. Dickens and Keel compared pottery to Iroquois, a shallow link, but similarity is not blood. Pishka and Kuala were Mississippian, not Cherokee. Their villages remain unknown, but their presence was strong. By the 1400s, the Catawba Valley teemed with towns, more than 250 sites identified by archaeologists. At the center stood Jawara, near today's Morganton, a capital with a mound and a ring of satellite villages. Spanish chroniclers describe Jawara's ruler as one of 3 Mikos presiding over 120 errata. Errata were town heads and village rulers, often women, who governed alongside the Miko. Above them, the Miko carried ceremonial and political power, and above the Miko stood the Cacique Grand, paramount chief, keeper of balance, fire, and order. This threefold system was theocratic: Errata, Miko, and Cacique Grand. It was upheld by ritual, kinship, and fire, not castles or crowns. The Yama, later known as the Yamasee, preserved the system as a people of balance. The Yuchi priesthood embodied it as the children of the sun, keepers of the green corn right. The Yuchi carried the office of great sun, the spiritual fire at the center of Mississippian life. Their priestly order later survived in names like Anehutani, the old scribe priesthood of the mountains. Titles like Sakawaya, meaning the woodpecker singer, linked fire, earth, and voice. The priesthood stood behind the Errata and Miko, ensuring the cosmos remained in balance. Jawara was not simply a capital, as it was a node in this wider priestly political world. Its trails tied into Kofidacheke, Gitari, Chiaha, and Kusa. Its mound anchored a fire lit in ceremony. Its Errata and Miko held seats of authority under the sacred fire. Jawara's place was within the greater union we call Upaha. Upaha. This was the name of the nations bound together before the Cherokee ever appeared. The Spanish recorded the name as Jwara, Suwali, Suwawa, their ears straining at unfamiliar sounds. The spelling shifted because they heard a non-Iroquoian tongue. Here the R, L, truth reveals itself. Older names favored R, such as Jawara and Jawala, while the Cherokee speech bent towards L. This mismatch marks different nations, different breath. The people of R were the mound builders. The people of L came later and claimed the ruins. When you see the L where R once stood, you are looking at the shadow of an older fire. Kitoa and similar terms sit awkwardly beside Jawara. That awkwardness is proof of borrowing, not creation. Spanish scribes wrote what they had heard, not what Cherokee later claimed. Their maps preserved the traces of pre-Cherokee nations. Later, erasure replaced them with the Cherokee country. But the names still rise if you know how to hear them. In 1540, Hernando de Soto crossed this world. He dragged the Lady of Kofidacheke hostage through these valleys. His men recorded Jawara, Chwala, Kofidacheke, Gitari, Chiaha, but never Cherokee. Their absence is evidence enough. The people of these towns were Mississippian, not Cherokee. De Soto scarred memory, but Jawara endured. In 1567, Juan Pardo marched inland from Santa Elena. He reached Jawara in winter and renamed it Kusenka. There, his men built Fort San Juan, the first European fort in the interior. Timber walls, chapel, quarters planted beside Jawara's mound. For 18 months, the Spanish demanded food, women, and labor. The Suwali endured, weighing the strangers as temporary guests, but arrogance and hunger strained the alliance. In 1568, Jawara and allies rose and burned Fort San Juan. Of 30 soldiers, only one survived. 5 other Spanish posts fell as well. Spain fled the mountains and never returned. The Jawali victory ended Spain's interior empire. Jawara's mound still rose where the fort lay in ashes. The earth remembered who ruled. The destruction of Fort San Juan was more than an event. It was a statement. It proved that native nations of the mountains could resist empire. The Swali did not cower before steel. They defended their world. Their uprising ended Spain's ambitions in the southeast. The Appalachian summit remained in native hands for another century. Jawara's story is one of strength, not disappearance. Yet historians later erased it. By the 1700s, maps stamped Cherokee country over Jawara's land. The Suwali name survived faintly. Swali, Chihuahua, but pushed aside. The Cherokee claimed not only land but memory. The Suwali revolt was not merely local resistance. It was defense of the entire Upaha world. Jawara, Kofiticheke, Gitari, Chiaha, and Kusa were bound together. Spain sought to break that order. The revolt preserved it. The Yama carried its balance, the Yuchi its priesthood. Orada, Miko, and Cacique Gran stood in their places. The Busk renewed fire, anchoring cosmos and polity. This was strength, not weakness. Spain could not comprehend it, so could not rule it. The revolt proved it could not be broken. Afterward, waves of disease and drought struck the southeast. Populations thinned, towns abandoned, plazas emptied. The Mississippian world collapsed under the weight of plague and change. Into this void stepped the Cherokee. They came late, carrying an Iroquoian tongue from the north. They entered a wounded land. They found mounds untended, fields fallow. They resettled towns not theirs. They renamed what they did not build. They claimed what they did not create. They adopted Hichichi and Muskogee as trade tongues. These were not ancestral, but convenient bridges. Their speech layered over Yuchi, Siouan, and Muskogee. Scholars mistook this for deep time, but silence before 1600 tells the truth. They appear only after collapse. Their timing is no coincidence. They rose where others fell. They walked into emptied plazas. They claimed abandoned fires. Yet they built a story of always being here. They pointed to names as proof. Estado, Tougaloo, Katua, but those names are older than Iroquois tongues. Katawa carries Siouan roots. Its suffix echoes Katabwa, Tutelo, Ofo. The word belongs to the Mississippian builders. Cherokee only carried it forward. Naming gave them legitimacy and in appearance, but the land remembered otherwise. The mound still rise as testimony. The myth of Cherokee, always here, silences 10,000 years of life. It erases pre-Clovis hunters into soil. It ignores archaic gatherers quarrying rhyolite. It forgets the woodland traders sending mica north. It denies Mississippian Mikos and Arata raising mounds. All of these thrived before the Cherokee came. Their names deserve remembrance. Jawara, Suwali, Kofiticheke, Guattari, Chiaha, Kusa. DeSoto met these nations, not Cherokee. Pardo built Fort San Juan at Jawara, not a Cherokee town. The uprising was Suwali strength, not Cherokee. The linguistic record also testifies Spanish scribes wrote our heavy names, Jawara, Jawara. The Cherokee bent towards L, proof of later arrival. That shift from R to L is a scar of time and takeover. a sound of one people burying another's voice. They called it Chalake. It was an outsider word, twisted into Cherokee. Cherokee grew from foreign lips, not native soil. Kitawa and Estado exposed Siouan and Yuchi roots. The adoption of older names was strategy, not origin. Colonial powers reinforced the fiction with maps of Cherokee country. Scholars sealed it by mislabeling Pisgah and Koala, but Pisgah and Koala are Mississippian, not Cherokee. The true story is one of layers: Mississippian rise, collapse, and then Iroquoian entry. Disease and drought weakened the Southeast before migration. Cherokee arrival filled a vacuum, not ancient belonging. Their trade tongues were borrowed, not ancestral. They filled abandoned mounds. They lit fires they did not kindle. They spoke names that did not invent. They did not invent. They claimed memory not theirs. Yet the earth still testifies. Before the Cherokee, there was Jawara. Before the Cherokee, there was Suwali. Before the Cherokee, there was Yupaha. Yeah, Yupaha. Yapaha, the name of the nations bound together, whose memory still rises from the earth. Hi, Nipitupashat Hapri. So there it is.
And that's it. Hi from, this is written by Nipetushi Hapri.
So,
I'm sorry if I didn't
no,
pronounce the name
you
correctly.
did
That was
awesome.
yeah, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
What I thank you, Vince, for sharing that. What what I get from all those words are a couple of things, right? So first off, when you read the DeSoto Chronicles, one thing they're constantly marveling over is the way the natives spoke. And I don't just mean the words they used. I mean the way they structured their responses, right? The way each point was so elegantly sort of interlaced. I think you used the word poetry earlier, and that they would structure it as such. So you can see evidence of that in his response, obviously. Also, all right, so he says all of that to say that the standard narrative, at least the one put forth by those representing NAGPRA, is not correct, right? One thing I found, Vince, when I started finding, a lot of this stuff behind me, and I started seeing these things these natives were doing that were not well represented in the mainstream narrative. And then I start digging in here to these DeSoto Chronicles, and I start seeing that the numbers that went along with this narrative, like the Cherokee having always been, right? When you look at that civilization, especially post contact, post disease, you don't see the same civilization that you see when you start getting on the ground, right? And when you start digging into these DeSoto Chronicles, it paints a much different picture than the narrative which we've all been handed. And that's kind of what I got from those words that gave me chills at certain points, because he was talking about that span, these epochs of time that have evolved here on this landmass, not just this recent sort of hunter gatherer myth that's been pervasive.
Right, it's amazing. The way it's written is like sinusoidal waves
Yeah.
splashing and and then coming back. And I mean, it's so well written poetry, and I'm glad to share it. And you're right, the timeline and place names are amazing to think of how deep that goes back, and the way these are still preserved today and known. I mean, it's written language, but it's poetry, and it's just amazing to learn about the uh,
It
the
is.
past going 10,000 years
Yeah.
back or
Yeah.
more, and that this was really that deep in embedded in culture, and they know it still. I mean, it proves that there was this continuity and lessons about their previous cultures that were passed down for so many years.
Well, it establishes this ancient link, and that's what so much of sort of my work, holistically has showed me, is that these people, whatever we call them, mound builders, whatever name, right, we put upon them, that their heritage just on this continent goes back so much further than we've been allowed to consider, right? Even as he was talking about going back to the Neolithic, my work says maybe, man, we're looking at, when you consider the Younger Dryas impact event, right, which we know decimated this continent in some form, right, which is what many people theorize took out the megafauna, right, at that same time period. So you're talking about right now, if you're talking an echo back 10,000 years, you're talking about a people who we can see an echo and a reverberation back to that event, right? They actually have memory back to that time, cultural memory.
They say that they were living by the ice. So if you have oral
Yeah, the ice
tradition
wall in
with
North
them saying
America.
that they
Yeah.
were just by the ice, right? And some of them say that they have oral tradition for two ice ages. So, but
Right.
but Vincent, I noticed two things when you were reading.
That would have made sense.
In fact, three things, but Jason already mentioned one of them. Is it was a matriarchal society, first of all, that calls to my attention because we don't see that. Everyone that knows the Indians by the cowboy movies, the way that the Indians are depicted is very masculine, right? Women are always in second because it's a projection of the Occidental society of that time projected into the Indians. But from your words, it was a matriarchal society. And another thing I notice is the word arata, because the word arata is exactly the same word used in the Middle East, not only for the sacred mountain, but for the city itself. There is the city of Arata. I don't know if they are connected in somehow, but I found it interesting. And my final point is what Jason said, that you reported before reading this that the Cherokee activated NACPRA in their favor for the Mount Pisgah figurines, and here is the leader saying that they have no authority over it because when they arrive there, they're already there. They just took over the
Hey, y'all are
territory.
good.
Right. These artifacts were from before, and in the article, it says they go back to 1000 BC time frame. Figurines emerged from that time, and you're right. The matriarchal or matriarch organization is the women that created them. These were carved by the leaders of the tribe that were women, and they were made as a clan symbol or a figurine that represented their clan or their heraldry. So if they carved a bear, they weren't carving just an animal bear. They were carving that person's clan, the bear clan, and that person as the bear. And there were every clan represented here in the site. All the Anishinaabe clans symbols were found here. Every single one is represented. It's amazing. There's over 2,500 of these figurines found in the mountain, and they all show the interesting figures of clan symbols.
It's the biggest cache or the biggest cache of that side of the country
Well, as far as I know, it's the biggest cache of clan symbols in the world.
in the world.
I mean, I've read all about these in this book called Social Symbolism of Tribal Art, and they had other places where they had figurines and things. Some of these figurines go back 30,000 years, like the Gravatian culture, 32,000 years old. And the figurines, like discs with notched sides, well, that's a Gravatian symbol, and they used it, and they found it in Europe from these Ice Age hunters that they would carve these figurines.
Gravitians?
Gravatians.
Gravet.
They had the same symbol they used in their Gravatian
So
culture.
that goes up to 50,000 BC, because I recently studied that, and so
Wow.
yeah, it goes up to 50,000 BC, that culture, and that is the culture that mingled with the Neanderthals. So in many of the places where the Neanderthals disappeared, they disappeared because they were included into the bloodline of the Gravitians. So
Look at that.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
in
And
Portugal, there is a place where they found a child that not only has the traces of both races, it was buried with symbols of both races. And all of that valley
That's a good
was a
picture.
communion between Gravitian and Neanderthal. They were living together. and they keep finding that
That's
all over Europe. So that's how Neanderthals, for the most part, disappeared. They were assimilated because there is something in sapiens blood that absorbs all over the races in given enough time. But I let you
And some of the
go on.
some of the figurines like this show what looks like a mastodon or ice
megafauna,
age,
man.
right? Megafauna elephants, and
Yeah.
I mean, look at these two as well. I mean, these are like some kind of a mammoth or mastodon. They were found in this mound in Mount Pisgah, and it's four of them together. And I mean, every single figurine like this was different in the mound. They all had very well styled and carefully carved surfaces. The the cross hatching or incising on their surfaces was intentional, and it was very meticulous. It's like they used a comb and they combed or brushed them carefully, incising their surfaces, and then they were placed there. And they use steatite in some of these. Others are pottery. There's sandstone. There's even mica schist. A lot of different materials were used to make these figurines, but they all had this intricate cross hatching or combed patterns of what could represent fur or tribal ancestral connections with the cross hatching symbol.
We also find this hatching or cross hatching in Europe, right?
Yes, I mean this
Wow.
cross hatching is found around the world.
Yeah.
Right.
This the it's an important tribal motif, and you can see on the surfaces of these they're covered in cross hatching on all their sides. Cross hatching was used on clothing, and they would use it to represent uh, ancestry, and they're most densely cross hatched on where the clothing is and on all sides. I mean, it's like they carefully, intricately carved them
True.
as a symbol of power.
Is this stone here, Vince?
Yes, these are stone.
Wow.
And so
That's
that
fucking
yeah,
wild.
it is. And most
I
of the
mean,
time
it's
represents
not in
peace.
comparison to other artifacts found. They're almost simpler and rougher than some of the stone artifacts found, Vince, all over North America. But man, I mean, with the arms and all, that's just not a carving style. That's wild's what it is, man.
Absolutely. And the Ojibwe used a bifurcated tribal symbol. I guess this could represent two, a semicircle and a circle. They're sitting on. So this is the tribes coming together, forming the tribe. They're shaking hands here in this figurine, and on this figurine they're smoking a pipe. It looks like
Yeah,
playing
I see it.
either a pipe
Oh,
or
yeah, it's like a communal pipe.
Exactly,
Look at that.
exactly.
right.
And so this let me dive into the interesting story that you have been experiencing
Love you. Be safe.
since you start studying this. That is, first of all, you are shown the figurines, right? You can even see them, and
Right.
and then obstacles start, and then you are not allowed to see them, and then they are in this museum, and then they aren't, and then the Smithsonian says they have them, and then they don't, and then they have them again. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started studying these back in around 2007. I first read about them at the St. Louis Museum, and I, s- I was looking for pictures of them to see what they look like because at the time I had been volunteering at Cahokia and I saw the cross hatching on the figurines at Cahokia and the Cahokia tablet. One side has its cross hatching, and the other side has a Birdman figurine on it. So I read about this site and saw a picture which showed the cross hatching, same as Cahokia, and I wanted to see more of it and try to understand what is this. And so I researched this and found out that they were at the Valentine Museum in Richmond, Virginia, and I requested special access to permission or special permission to access them and photograph them. And so I was granted the permission. And back in 2009, I said I want to speak to your archaeologist about these as well. and I want to see all the animal figurines, and I want to see everything. Show me everything you got. I want to take pictures of this stuff. And I asked about if I could measure it, weigh it, just record it. And so I went there. They had a museum display at that time, and these were shown in a back part of the museum, and it said forging history. They call them forgeries, basically, like this, like as if they were created. And as you know, the Smithsonian had introduced that idea that they were forged, like planted or something. So, but
Of course they did.
right. So I spoke with the archaeologist there, and I said, "Hey, these look like a clan symbol," and they were described in DeSoto Chronicles at the village of Kofitacheke. He said, "Oh, I can't talk to you then," and he walked away. Literally turned around and walked away, and
That's how they do it.
that was
Well,
it.
you
He
know
just
that, so
totally,
okay, our conversation is over.
yeah. And shortly
Well,
after that, I mean,
right.
I paid the museum fee of like $250 for that 4 hours of photographing these. Shortly after that, they took off these from the display and they put them all in a storage locker. And so they've been off display since 2019, and subsequently researched the collection at the University of North Carolina and at the Smithsonian. These were divided up between those three museums. So the collection was so big, it was divided in thirds, basically, and sent to the University of North Carolina for 700 or so of these. The others, there was 900 at the Valentine Museum and others at the Smithsonian. And some of them had been appearing in auctions online and things like that. So somehow they had deaccessioned, or some people walked off with them and they'd been sold. And they were selling for over thousands of dollars each at auctions. I was asking, and then so I made another.
Because they're knockoffs, I'm sure, right?
So let
And
me.
so I made another appointment at the Valentine Museum, and I was able to get the video crew there, and we were able to get these on video showing the collection, and we unboxed about 70 of them. The ones that had previously been on display, they let us unbox them and photograph them and measure them.
And that's where these photos are coming from.
Yes.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
So I still have
I-
the photos from there. But then the interesting thing is, in the meantime, I went to the University of North Carolina. I found their letters from Valentine documenting the discovery, and at the Smithsonian, I found the ones there that are in their vaults. They have these in drawers at the Smithsonian, and they let me have some pictures of them. So they're still really at all three places. I requested access at the University of North Carolina to look at the wampum belts and the lead bullets and knives and things that were metal, and they said the Cherokee don't allow that.
and
So
the Cherokee are saying they're not ours.
right,
And so we're back to the narrative being controlled.
No, they did it
Vin-
follow. They did put in a paper asking for them, right, Vincent? So
Right.
right. I mean, I had requested permission to the museum, the University of North Carolina,
But he's
and
got the letter from the Cherokee leader now, Ricardo, saying, not so much ours.
right, that came after the University of North Carolina said, no, we won't allow you to study these or access the mountains. And I'm like, well,
Right.
I still want to study them. And
They, they don't want you to have access to truth. One thing I pulled up here, if I'll take a second, Vince, and I'll read for us because I think it gets us back on target where you're heading. Is look, so you have the firsthand account of the gentleman who first unearthed this. The Smithsonian has it, right?
yeah,
I often get mad at people discounting firsthand sources. And when I started, bumping into Mobilla and all the stuff around here, and I go to the DeSoto Chronicles, we have also from them, Vince, a description of what they found at here. This particular chronicle says Kofa Chekwe, right? But I was just going to read a piece where they start talking about this temple, Ricardo. There's actually several. There's burial lodges, and so who knows which of these particular structures we're in. But if people, as they see what's in front of us, these figurines that might seem as slightly outlandish, right? When you consider with a typical narrative. Let's look here quickly, like a paragraph of what these people found with the DeSoto expedition when they wound it up in Kofachekwe. So they had the temple where they found pearls. You know, I'm going to skip that part, but just pearls beyond belief. They carried them on with them. You know, barrels and barrels stacked to the ceiling. Anyhow, they go, man, to this temple next, right? And at first they describe the roof. On the roof of the temple, there had been placed many shells of various marine animals arranged according to their size, from large to small. It is not known how they came to be so far inland. Okay, the shells were placed with the inner side on top because of its greater luster. Among them were also many periwinkles, extraordinarily large. There were spaces between the shells and the periwinkles, for they were all arranged in regular order. In these spaces were large strings made of pearls and seed pearls, half a fathom long, that were spread out on the roof, descending gradually, one string beginning where another left out. Where the sun reflected in off them, it was a beautiful sight. Now, what they're describing just here, if you're familiar with anyone that has ever had a psilocybin tea experience, what will be described happening, especially if you do it out in nature, is a connecting string coming down from branches of trees or from even the air connecting to other living things. It's a known repeated entropic phenomenon, right? And that sounds to me like what was being recreated here. We know these people use psilocybin in their rituals with spirit. And here I see described, man, these pearls hanging from these strings so that you can't see the strings, and they've got feathers, right? So the effect is when the sun hits it, you've got this shimmering effect in the sky, right? Now, outside this temple, and I'll finish with this, there were giants that were placed as if to guard the door. Temples, listen how they say these. Near the door were 12 giant figures carved from wood, such faithful imitations of life, and with such a fierce and bold posture that the Spaniards stayed to look at them for a long time without passing, marveling to find in such a barbarous country works that, if they had been in the most famous temples of Rome, in the most flourishing period of its power and empire, would have been esteemed and valued for their grandeur and protection. These giants were placed as if to guard the door and oppose the entrance. There were 6 on one side, 6 on the other, one after the other, descending gradually in size from the largest to the smallest. The first 4 varas high. A vara was a yard, right? So you've got 3, 6, you've got 12-foot high statues, various weapons in their hands made in proportionate to the size of their body. Each held clubs, the last quarter which were embellished with diamond-shaped points, bands made of copper. They were so exactly like the clubs as being described belonging to Hercules that it seemed either might have been copied from the other. Right? Now they go on. They describe broadswords in one hand. They describe things to appear as though they were made of iron and steel, right? But they were made of the native copper. They go on and on with each of these statues. Now, what they find inside, guys, to go to our opening about this being a peace center, what they then find inside is all of these large rooms, and in each room corresponding to the weapons the statues were holding outside. So if my first guy was there with a big club with copper all on it, the first chamber, antechamber, as they went in, was stacked high, neatly with clubs, right? Now I go down. My next statue had something that looked like a broadsword, they described, but made with copper. The next antechamber in, stacked high and neatly, as though it was an armory per se, right? Was the broadswords, and it goes on, Ricardo, all the way with each of these 6 weapons represented in these wooden statues contained within these antechambers, right? Now, oftentimes when you talk to people about native lore, you hear about arrowheads being found in large caches, and they say that it was not what it first appears. This wasn't a weapons cache. This is where weapons were placed and left in a ceremonial fashion to represent peace, right? So therefore, this temple being described fits neatly, I think, into the narrative of this being a large scale place. What I mean by that is its cultural reach being large and known as a place for peace. right? That's what I see echoed in the description of this temple. I could go on for like 4 pages, Ricardo. I'll do it later tonight in our own time. Them describing this place with these weapons stored up, man. And then I think it's no irony, Vince, that as you opened with, De Soto comes in here to desecrate it, to try to establish his power and dominance. But I think to symbolically, what that whole expedition represented and brought in here was a destruction of the epochs of peace, right, and development, true scientific development that had been taking place here on this continent.
Well, the thing is, in order to justify occupation, in order to justify ownership of the land, the two requisites is that they are not Christians, but they also have to be primitive. So
Right, right.
all that was indicative of culture, of agriculture, of knowledge, of wisdom, of technology, all of that was kind of suppressed in order to justify the occupation of the land, right?
Manifest destiny.
But
Anyhow, I just wanted to read that, Vince, because
Right.
I know as a viewer, you might, be sitting here going, "Oh, these are outlandish," and then when you read these words from 500 years ago, and you see that they marveled at the shit they were finding, right? They said if this were back home, everyone would be jealous.
Right. That's very well said, and that's so true. They they describe this as the most amazing find in the country, and even more amazing than Peru gold and all of the treasure that they saw before in Mesoamerica. I mean, it was incredible, and unfortunately, they burnt it down, and they regretted that.
but
Later on in their chronicles, they wrote how they felt regret and sadness because of the fact that they burnt it down and they left it as charred remains of pearls and figurines.
Hmm? Yeah, they burned the pearls, and well, they were setting up their karmic destiny for when they got down to these parts, and ran into Chief Tuscaloosa.
that's another
Um,
curious thing about this site, right, Vincent? Because as I understood it, it was burned to the ground several times. But the
just
first question I want to ask you is, you talked about archaeological reports where they're taking all of this 25,000 figurines. And my question is, was it found in undisturbed ground or in disturbed ground? Because they are claiming them to be false. So that's why I want to make sure that it is written that it was found in undisturbed ground or on disturbed ground. Do you know?
That's an interesting question. I mean, in the Garden Creek book by Alice Wright, she had carbon dated some of these carbon remains. She determined some of them were dated to DeSoto's time, literally 427 years ago. 427 years old were the results of this carbon date, and then other carbons found in the mound were from 2,000 years ago, around uh, you know just 300 AD or so, or common at 300 CE. So I mean, yeah, it had been burnt down multiple times, and the fact that the layers were mixed up is evident as well, because she was finding some of the older dates above the younger dates in this mound.
and what was the youngest date, Vince?
430 was the youngest date that Alice reported, but when we
So
thermoluminescent,
that's correlative data directly to. It was this time of year too, wasn't it? That DeSoto roughly. Well, this is when Mobilla came through there. That is correlative data, right? For
yeah,
sure. When we have the firsthand accounts here saying we went through, we saw this amazing shit, and we burned some of it, then we have
right,
data right there in the carbon that says this was that place, right?
Yeah, but we also
right,
have
it's absolutely,
pieces much older, right, Vincent?
well,
Well,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I just wanted to go ahead and corroborate that. Look, Vince, what he's pointed out and what I pointed out is nailing down DeSoto route, no matter what anybody wants to say.
Right, it's an absolute correlation. There's a
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the chronicles are a first-hand account. We know the carbon dating matches. We know the description of the artifacts matches. They also found caches of celts and axes that match or correlate to their journal as well. So I mean, these were very well recorded, documented, and it's amazing that you can still read about it today. It's like being there as a first person
And
account.
these weapons, man, those are mind-blowing, right? I mean, that just pops the narrative wide open for me. I read this, and then you're talking about, real archaeological data, that these people had representations of axes made with copper, Yes, these broadswords of copper may or may not have been usable against iron swords, but this is not a culture I was taught in school, that they understood weapons the way a Westerner would, even if it was with softer metals. It's
Right.
just it's narrative popping, honestly.
Well, it's world changing history. I mean, it's a narrative that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Copper and the fact that the Iroquois were connected as well, the linguistic connections and all of the tribal names go back. And so this was a center where a lot of tribes came together as a peace location. So it's interesting as well that the Doerchek and Hardaway site directly east of this had the same cross hatching on their figurines, and they dated back 10,000 years. And they were found at all levels of excavation.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they use these symbols of cross hatching to cover these artifacts found throughout Doerchek, Hardaway, and Mount Pisgah. And the Judah Collar Rock as well in North Carolina has the figurines of humans and animal carved all over it, and it has that 45-degree angle engraved in it. And so, I mean, this was a widespread culture, very powerful, very important.
In fact, I would say that this is a representation of several cultures, not all of them from the United States. That would imply then pre-contact from coming either through the Pacific or through the Atlantic, and then infusing their own culture into the pieces that were found, right?
Well,
Right.
Ricardo, look at this timeline, guys. I'll let you keep going, Vince, but 10,000 years ago, this continent, what else was happening? Isn't that roughly the timeline of the Younger Dryas comet impact hypothesis event, right? So if I've got what amounts to global destruction, though localized mainly across North America and somewhat Northern Europe, right? If the top northern half of the world has been shattered and devastated, would that mean I'm seeing sort of what was started as a global refuge spot, right, for refugees during this cataclysm point? That would explain why I'm seeing it echo down through time as a peace refuge, right, where all these nations come to sort of hammer in and recommit to peace. That's where my mind goes when I hear 10,000 years. I'm hearing people that knew what megafauna was before it got destroyed. That's why they've got pieces, right? So they had either ancestors or themselves that survived this event, and then they coalesced, possibly from Asia, possibly from all over the northern hemisphere, right?
Well,
And so
Right.
we're seeing echoes.
I would say that we find the end of matriarchal societies with the beginning of warfaring. So that's why in Iberia, in summer, and some other places that are being now studied regarding to that, because they didn't expect this, is that we don't find any tool whose only purpose is to kill another human being before 4000 BC. So they all
You're
start.
just saying that because Jacqueline's got a knife in her hand right now. I don't.
No, no, she doesn't. But luckily for me. But it is that point where swords start to appear, and other tools that they don't serve other purpose than to kill another human being. So that for me marks the change between matriarchal and patriarchal societies, if I'm speaking it correctly. But in this case, Vincent, if you could change, so we could see a few more figurines, we can find things
Sure.
that are representative of different cultures, not just not what we consider to be North American.
Sure, and one of the ones, a lot of them show bears. Some like this showing a bear eating a human. It looks like a giant bear.
That's a
If that's
bear.
yeah,
Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see the human
It's
too.
not
Wow, look
pareidolia.
at
It's
that.
not pareidolia. It's actually there.
No, yeah, it just took, third eye's active, man. I was seeing a skull and all kinds of things. But yeah,
Right.
no, I
And
totally got it now. That's
from
wild.
raising his hand up, and I mean, this is the other side of this one. I mean, there's some that show like what looks like a human in a dress. This is a female, obviously, and then a male figurine here holding hands.
Detail.
I mean, yeah, the detail is amazing. There's a lot of these like that are a couple like
What's the
holding
measurements
hands.
on this thing, Vince?
These range from around uh, about less than an inch all the way up to the biggest ones being about 3 feet tall. This one is about I think 7, 8 inches. And see, like this one here, I mean, this looks like a kimono dragon, I believe, and but or a lizard, and holding a staff. But this is an
Walking
actual
alligator. Yeah.
alligator, yeah. And then this looks like a person holding a
That's how
basket on their
Moses got
head.
across the Nile. He was an alligator, just swam across that motherfucker. That's
Yeah.
how he did it.
And then how about this jaguar or panther? I mean, it's got this cross hatching, and it's the clan or John of the puma clan, or a
Wow.
wildcat. I mean, it's emanating from this heart. These cross hatching lines come out like it's centered to be where the
Hmm.
heart is at, and it's carved in relief. So this is literally a stele that is sitting on a flat base. This one looks a lot like a Asian type of head, I believe, Siberian or even Chukchi. But holding a basket on their head, that's something that was common in tribes throughout Africa and Asia as well. I mean, there's this sinusoidal waves like serpentine patterned on the side of this one, and they're all amazing like this. They're just unique, and there's some that are covered in cross hatching like this that are uh, cups and vessels.
With
You
handles,
know,
which I found fascinating. Some
right,
of them have handles before Europe starting putting handles into their uh, cups, right?
right. And this again has a notched disc. Notched disc is a symbol of the original female ancestor. Essentially, uh, it's a heraldic symbol that was used to represent birth, and so that's common around the world, and it's used in Europe and
So,
throughout the
so
world.
let's look at this
And
Look at
from
the
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 academic.
inside of that cup.
Yeah.
It's so rough, right? The cup in the foreground, the interior.
yeah, the interior. I mean, well, they carved this out of a single piece of stone,
Right.
and the interior is kind of polished, smooth. It's not like incredibly smooth, but
It's worked.
it's
It's worked. Yeah.
worked. Yeah, it's
Well, it's
worked.
certainly not machined, I guess was my point, I mean,
Right.
right. Okay.
So, from the archaeological perspective, we are supposed to look at this and think that one guy or a team of people were creating 25,000 pieces as a forgery and was storage and not sold or traded into one single place that suffered several fires and comes from many hundreds to 1,000 years ago. Is that what they want us to believe?
Well, and they're only claiming that, to finish the point, second, right? At first they claim it's all real, and then they come forward with this forgery crap when everybody wants
Yeah,
to investigate.
finding symbols that they
Is
can't
that right,
justify
Vince?
in the United States.
Right. So the theory that they were planted, I mean, it's something that Smithsonian developed, and they actually went to the site after these had all been dug up in 1880. So they showed up in 1883 with Emmer, and he was sent there to try to basically debunk the find.
Hmm.
And he claimed to have found the source of the uh, artifacts, as if the person that planted them for Valentine to find 3 years before somehow duped Valentine and was just making these as like made to order items or something. But there's obviously not. It's not the case because they're covered in cross-hatching and all this fire. The evidence of fire permeates the surfaces and some of pottery as well. The cross-hatching and tribal motifs are covering it. So it would have been just like insane to make all these clan symbols, each matching the Anishinaabe clan tribes, as a dupe or something to
And then
trick.
to find 400-year-old carbon and rub on them, appropriately,
Right.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's so much correlating data. So that gets me right to my only question is why send the guy in 3 years later to debunk, right? That right there sniffs to me of wrong motivations, right?
Right. Well, at the time, the Smithsonian was trying to debunk the mound builder myth, and basically they wanted to discredit anything that showed cultures could have come from across
Yeah,
the ocean.
yeah.
They didn't
And
want anyone to know about it or study it.
science was taking on, its natural science was taking on its anti-catastrophism very staunchly at that point. Yeah, I see it now. The creationism and, just all of the things that were afoot at that point. And the
Right.
Smithsonian
Manifest
was
Destiny was a big factor.
narrative control, manifest destiny.
Yeah, but
Amen.
that was everywhere. So, for instance, in Portugal, you had natural philosophers doing excellent work in studying all the megalithic monuments on the country. But as soon as natural philosophy was replaced by materialistic and uniformitarian science, they managed in the 40s to bring another academic to study them all. And 90% plus of them were then considered natural when they were previously considered as a creation of prehistoric man. So this happens everywhere. And I'm sure that in America they had different objectives because they had to cut any possibility of pre-Columbian contact. And in these figurines, I'm not sure if you're going to see some, but they show even faces, as we've seen before, that Asian face, and animals and plants, because they are filled with plants, the figurines, right, Vincent? Some of them are
Right.
not native. And
They're
this is an amazing piece.
non-native.
Yeah.
There's some of them that literally show a rhino. There's Bactrian camels or Asian animals. This one, it looks like a crocodile almost, but um, on this side we found that this is Cherokee lettering, or the lettering that would be translated as the immortals. This actually translates in its the these are the letters here carved on this figurine. So shows that they had a written language, and they were saying Nev-Nihai
But
on the
is
stone.
this Cherokee or this
Peace, harmony.
previous to Cherokee and
And it's probably previous to Cherokee. I mean, Cherokee they believed that was invented as a language in 1812. So, I mean, this was excavated from the mound, which predates the site. I mean, obviously, it goes back to DeSoto when he burnt it. But if this is even earlier than that, I mean, it proves that the Cherokee language, or this language, whatever was claimed by the Cherokee later on, existed earlier.
as the chief was saying on the text that you wrote, that you
Right.
read, sorry.
And it's this one's at the Smithsonian. It's in James Mooney book. I mean, the immortals were a important mythical element of the culture, that they were writing that on the stone here, and it's something that goes back in time, into the time that the myths were created. So it could be very prehistoric. And
We have two perspectives here. Either those animals that you spoke have to be considered megafauna existent in North America, because we know that there were proboscideans that include several species of elephants, or type of elephants. We know that there were rhinos. We know that there were camels, at least 3 or 4 types of camels, maybe more. I can't remember right now. So either they have to push this back before the Ice Age, or they have to say it is from other places in the planet that are not North America, because after a period of time, after the megafauna got extincted in North America, you can only find these animals in either Africa or Asia and not in the United States. So they are boxed in this conundrum. They can't accept either of them because they must be recent and there is no contact. So they have a double whammy on this one.
Right, right, and that's why that they were so against studying these, and they really spent a lot of time trying to debunk them so they wouldn't be studied. And you're right. I mean, the mastodons, the rhinos. I mean, that's proof of either a sub-Saharan Africa connection or Ice Age. So it's one or the other. They can't just, and they don't like either one. So they had to say, no, don't look at this, don't study it. We don't want anyone to research it because either way it'll be bad. And they basically put it in a box and drored it for 150 years.
And
But you get that pre-Clovis, right? I mean, pre-Clovis, naturally they were fighting against something that dated to pre what 13,000 years ago. But in a mostly post-Clovis, certainly out here with normal thinking folks, a post-Clovis world, this stuff isn't that shocking compared with other actual archaeological sites around North America, right? Like the what is it, Topper site, even over in the coastal Carolinas, you're talking 50,000 years. So, to be looking at artifacts seriously that point back to 30,000 years is no longer of topical concern to archaeology. They have evidence pointing to at least 50,000 years. White Sands footprints,
yeah,
28,000, weren't they, Ricardo?
28 thing, I think.
You know? Yeah, so now, at least today, these are well within the timeline of known advanced occupation within North America, is all I'm saying.
Right, absolutely. And the possibility that this site was used for those many thousands of years after these were created, is it's very strong that they just kept these. They accumulated them for thousands and thousands of years.
Uh-huh.
They didn't get rid of them
Exactly.
because they were sacred relics, and they
Right.
kept them.
Even that language, that Cherokee, I mean, I don't know if you've done the testing to the rock and the writing, but that could have been a later addition, right? That they just,
Right,
this is a cherished item and this is where we represent peace. So we want to mark our cherished family heirloom with our understanding to pass forward.
right. That could have been a later addition, added
Yeah.
long after the original was created.
Mm.
So, like a totem pole, they can add to it or rework it as it goes along through time. And some totem poles were made as symbols of clans. Others are like shame totems. Like the one in this mound was found with a rifle. I mean, it literally has a gun holding their card with a gun. So I mean, that
Wow.
could have been a late addition when
Yeah.
Europeans showed up with guns, and that's evidence that they were continuously adding to this through time. So I think that it really represents a lot of different cultures accumulated together,
I do
just
too. I
like
think I think all evidence backs it up, man.
Uh,
I really do.
can you tell us what is that uh, cube-like structure beside that's a recent addition?
yeah, I'm not really sure that in this picture it almost looks like a shade structure or something that they had put
Mm.
there. I mean, this is the Twin Earth Lodge mound after they dug it out in around 1965. They found all these rocks and debris around it, and you can see the subterranean connection between the two. But I'm not sure what that structure is. It was just in the picture, and but it shows the Twin Earth Lodges and the depth of the Earth Lodges around them, and this is another picture of the Earth Lodge and how it was trenched or dug into. Like these were the layers of excavation when they dug down into the mound and they found a hollowed out chamber in the middle. So there was clear evidence of where they trenched down into the mound in the 1800s. And then later on, just took down every layer and drew it all in profile here.
So if they did that, we might assume that it was undisturbed ground.
Right. I think what the 1800s archaeologists were trying to do is just get into that earth lodge because they knew it was hollow and it had all these things in there. And then later on, the archaeologists came on and they dug out the whole thing and took more of the earth away. But at that time, when the original archaeologists dug this up, they said it was ashes and evidence of burnt everywhere. There was fire and there were charcoal remains. This is what Ben Valentine wrote. He said, many of the artifacts were burned. We should like to know if there had been any particular about the appearance of the places where the burning was and where the objects were found. We know that sometimes there was a general burning, or even in the best of things, they were, for some reason, put together and a fire applied, and for everything that would burn was consumed. He said, I cannot help but thinking that this was the case with the first images, whether some of them of soapstone or others of yellow and black earth. I believe they all came from the wall, I guess the wall around the outside of this, but you did not say anything about having seen a hearth there or large stones in which the relics might have been laid and burned. So, he's basically confirming that the building was burned down, and these were found in the building. This was a structure, and it was well described in the DeSoto Chronicles that the walls of this earth lodge were covered with reeds. They had woven reeds.
Woven mats. Yep. I skipped that part when I read, but that's precisely what they say. It sure is.
So that was.
If the pieces are stone, right? How burning would solve anything?
And it's interesting. They may have been wrapped in furs, and they may have had wraps of pearls around them as well. So when they were burned, I think the fur and the pearls were all burnt together, and the stones, they thought it was wood. In their article, they thought it was wood. They thought it would all burn down.
Oh, look
but
at that.
I think that they may have even had these wrapped in pearls and furs representing the actual totems or animals. What was inside there was not wood; it was stone. And so what was left is
sense.
Yeah, what was left is after the furs burn off, they have this greasy, oily surface, which is blackened and charred, just like you see in the pictures.
Oh, man. That's because, look, when you read through these chronicles, the pearls were everywhere, right? They were all over the ceilings, the walls, everywhere, coming down with feathers tied to them. They used the pearls piled in piles. So the fact that these things have evidence of potentially being wrapped, and furs were everywhere here as well, even in these weapons caches. They talk about the piles of furs. Man, it's just adding up, Vince, is all. I don't mean to keep interrupting, but it's just everything you say. I'm like, wow, no wonder these people are trying to hide it.
Yeah, but
Right. It's amazing.
there is a point, Vincent, where you put your money up front and you paid for some testing of these pieces, right?
That's right. I paid for testing this year, thermoluminescence testing, and the museum, Valentine Museum, permitted testing on 10 of these pieces, and
You selected the pieces, or they selected the pieces?
they selected the pieces. They told me that they were pottery, and that the pottery would be able to determine a date and a date of last fired. Thermoluminescence being the study of when something had last been exposed to a fire, and so the goal was to determine if this is something that could be dated. So they were tested with Oxford authentication. The samples were sent to the Oxford authentication and tested, and of the 10 samples, 8 of them came back indeterminate or insensitive to testing, and 2 of them, they said less than 100 years ago it was fired, but they were authenticated as being pottery for 2 of them. So less than 100 years, I asked them, how could this be less than 100 years since they were excavated 146 years ago? And were they exposed to a fire after they were excavated? And they said, no, it could be the nearest 1,000 years. Virginia State Conservator said thermoluminescence looks at 1,000-year periods. And I said, well, how come you didn't tell us that then it could be 1,000 years old? And they said, well, it's just not sensitive enough to determine. And I said, well, let's do some more testing. I want to find out more. And they shut it down. They said, no more testing will be permitted. We're not going to do anything else. And basically, they've stopped communication since then.
So their range of burning was from the time of excavation back 1,000 years, basically, is what
Right.
they said.
Right. That's what they
Okay.
said. Basically, it could be any time in the past 1,000 years before they were excavated. And a
Okay.
hundred
So
years,
if it's a forgery, somebody burned it and then buried it in order for the first gentleman to unearth it, if I'm following the storyline thus far,
right.
right?
Yes.
Okay. So they went to great effort and then they made sure to put
That's the
some
normal
old ash
process
on
of
it.
any kind of forgery of this kind. You first create 25,000 pieces, and then you put them in a mound, and then you
In a
burn the
mound.
mound down and cover it up. That's a normal
In a mound
process of
with
forgery.
first-hand descriptions from people who were there in the time range from which the burning could have happened, right? 146 to 1000. Well, 430, wasn't it? Some odd years ago. We have first-hand accounts of people who were there who saw shit they said if it were back home, everyone would want it and wouldn't believe where we got it, right?
Right.
Okay? I mean,
And
we're talking about the same place here.
also, the fact that they were thermoluminescence dated at all confirms that some were made of pottery. So they
Mm.
had to have fired this pottery to make it low fired, pottery. They weren't just soapstone or pot stone like Mr. Rao at the Smithsonian said. This proves that some were in fact pottery, and Mr. Valentine documented this as well. That um, so there would have to have been a step for creating pottery in there for some of these.
So could we say that the oldest ones are made of stone, and that the last ones to be created in ancient times were already made of pottery?
Yeah, and it's hard to say whether the pottery was before the stone or not, but a lot of the steatite figurines and bowls predated pottery as just a general rule of
Yeah,
thumb in archaeology.
because when you're reading from the letter from the Cherokee leader, I remember him saying that pottery was invented much more recently. So everything
Right.
before that was still being made of stone, and then with the availability of or the knowledge of pottery, they start making some, at least some of them, in pottery because it's much easier to create, right?
Right. And that's true. And the fact that now we have thermoluminescence dating of these. There was a pottery figurine with
When?
two holding hands. They were basically holding hands of an elder and a younger person depicted seated in industry throne chairs. This is they have a Chukchi type of facial appearance, and it was clearly like a transfer of knowledge or wisdom from the elder to younger depicted here. And I mean, this was authenticated. And the other one was this bowl that came back. Um, this bowl was authenticated. It has handles. It has three legs on it. Uh, all the others said insensitive to testing. We cannot determine authenticity based on the other 8 tests, but these two came back positive.
And so,
And
what is the current status of your research? Are you allowed to see anything else? Is communication closing? How do you see that
well,
you move forward?
my next goal what I want to do is get to the Smithsonian and test some of the ones that they have and see if they'll permit it. They have several drawers of these artifacts there at the Smithsonian.
Wow.
But since the Smithsonian has been on furlough or closed down due to their funding cuts and things, that we have to wait for them to come back in business. And
Well, now would be the perfect time. There's nobody in your way to slow you down.
Right, and it would require permission from the Sweetland, Maryland facility. I've been there before, and you have to get permission to go and access certain things, but they would allow it and they would review it on a case by case basis.
Excuse me, Mr. President or Mr. Kennedy, if anybody's listening, even Luna, if anybody's listening and you pretend to care about the truth of our past, including the truth that spans back eons upon this continent, I say we need to get a look at these statues that we've got in the Smithsonian, and I think Vince needs to lead the charge. Okay, now back to your regular scheduled programming. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you for that. That was well said. I appreciate that.
So there are still places that are still the possibility of you being granted access to this species.
Well, yes, I mean, I think so. I mean, even though the Valentine has shut down communication or testing, they said only archival uh, data will now be allowed to determine the chronology
And
at
do
the
you think that,
Valentine.
No new data. No
right,
new
and do you
data.
think in
Okay.
terms of the Valentine, they only understood what they had in their hands once you start digging into it? Do you think that they were faced with the fact that they had that, some of them even in exposition, and your studies alerted them that this is something that has to be hidden back into the basement?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think I brought it to their attention, and they didn't really want to address it. So I think they put it in the storage locker after I brought it to their attention in 2009. They took the stuff off display, and it's been in boxes in the storage locker since then. I mean, this picture here from the
Is
mound
this the
shows,
skull with the wound?
yeah, the skull that has a
The
wound.
other, the other, Ricardo, there was one other correlating piece of data here that I'd heard about he's got, and I'm going to let him do it, but it ties to Soto here. This is cool. I was going to make sure you included this. Thanks. Go ahead.
Right, DeSoto, when he came through the mound, it says his men kicked over skulls and shot them, and this one in particular has been shot, and, and it has post-mortem damages, which match the DeSoto Chronicles as well. And I mean, they basically they shot it. It's got a hole right in the side of the skull, and it has fractures coming up with evidence that this is post-mortem damage. So the DeSoto Chronicles discuss that as well later on, and talk about how they kicked over these caskets and basically kicked around the chief's skulls, disrespecting them. And
Because these bodies would be inside this kind of a basket-like
Uh-huh.
casket, right?
well, it was in a coffin, a wooden coffin. And I mean, they've got pictures of the coffins here, and the skull. I think it's this one here that was depicted. This skeleton is laying there in ashes, and it's got a hole in the side of its head. And so this mound, I think what we're looking at here is the mound itself with the skeleton when it was first excavated, and they
Yeah,
found these
they
wood.
describe it, Vince, right? As, I mean, it's a burial temple, really. So these things weren't necessarily buried underground.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I mean, so, man, how do they have all, Ricardo, here's what they're up against, right? So you've got the skull, you've got these figurines, you've got a fire dated to a first-hand account of the fire, you've got the skull destructions, you've got descriptions of DeSoto and his men firing a harquebus or whatever you called it into these things to desecrate it. And here Vince has brought forward or highlighted evidence that collates all of those things, you know? And so anybody that wants to start calling these things a forgery, I think has to take both all of these into account and answer why all of them, line up.
Well,
Right, it checks the box. Every box is checked on that
It's
list.
to do. Yeah, that's words don't even you don't even need words. Yeah, exactly. It's just it does that.
if it is a forgery, it was being done by the natives for no apparent reason, because it's too old
Right,
to be a modern day forgery to make money out of it, because no one did. So,
right.
Well, it blows the narrative that was wanting to be pushed, about the natives out of the water. because who knows if these guys were whatever into the DeSoto Chronicles or had these accounts. I don't know, right? Where the obfuscation started. But at some point, whoever is controlling a narrative, right, putting out our damn school books, they do not want that thing popped, right? And this, it's the same I've run up against with Mabilla, right? The things you find and you start to realize these natives were capable of verifies all of our firsthand accounts, right? Which they have been busy. There's one footnote in this book, Vince. This was published by the University of Alabama. There's like one footnote, and it's when they're describing the size of Mobilla and the thing they're looking for. They put in one footnote, and it says this is obvious exaggeration. You know, I'm serious. And so they're so invested in this narrative at all turns that it's not, you don't have to look for an institutional conspiracy. What did we say the other day, Ricardo? Where interests converge, right? There's no need to call it a conspiracy. And you see all of these interests constantly converging around evidence that destroys that narrative that was necessary for the culture they wanted to create here in this Western expansive
You
empire.
cannot claim ownership over an advanced civilization. It has to be
Hey, they
primitive.
tried,
It
bro.
has to be
If it weren't for Vince and those of us out here, they'd be getting away with that shit too. They're trying.
sure. Well, I think more and more people are realizing that the pre-Columbian Americas were extremely advanced by any kind of measure when you place it against Europe or Asia. So
Look at those guys. Correct.
this is the archaeologist that went there, Vincent?
Yeah, this is the archaeologist, the crew that went there, including me and Valentine himself, and James Mooney from the Smithsonian holding this paper. These are
So
their
Who's
expedition.
Who's Valentine? Do you know which one he is?
I think he's this guy in this suit jacket.
The tall one?
No, the I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the one that's standing in between holding a paper and then the hat, and then I think that's Valentine. But
Gotcha.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean this picture actually shows the excavation crew, and then the next one shows that they had petroglyphs on site, Yuchi petroglyphs that were found as well, and then this is the crew in the field, walking the field and looking at these mounds pre-excavation. So they
Enormous. Yeah.
So I mean, it's they can say this is not archaeological, but it clearly is. I mean, they found it in the mound, they dug it up and excavated it, and
Doesn't look like disturbed ground to me.
right, there's no disturbed ground. This was a field, that was. It looks like a plowed field with
Yeah,
kind of crop.
hay or some sort of crop like barley or wheat or something piled
Yeah.
up.
They describe
Just
anything.
been recently cut.
Do they describe anything related why they gain interest in this site? What was the source of interest for going here and dig?
Yeah, I think it was marked on maps as one of the most interesting sites at an early date. James Mooney had it on his map, and he showed it as 3 diamonds. I think it was known from the time of the Civil War. Burnett was a Civil War veteran, and he was excited about it. He wrote a letter in 1860 saying this is an exciting place, and he wanted to share it with people. And I think that's when it became known as a mound site. So I think when Burnett was living there, I mean, he bought the land, and I think he was interested in its archaeological significance and wanted to preserve it.
Is there any? Does that map exist anywhere?
Yes, the map itself, I mean, it's at the Smithsonian. I think I have a picture of it somewhere.
And what is the relevance of the 3 diamonds? Do we know?
Those represent the 3 mounds on the site.
Oh, I see.
Oh wow. Okay, perfect.
See, I think I've got it here later on in the presentation. I guess, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be on a different...
No worries, no worries.
That's okay. Yeah, loose here, man. Obviously.
So
We're
how
just-
old would be that map?
It was from 1860. Or, no, I mean, 1880, when James Mooney showed up. 1880 was when they did the excavation, took that picture. So I mean, it could be back as early as 1860 when Burnett was on the site and recording it as an important site. But I know it's on the picture here. It's depicted with James Mooney.
Okay, I think the only thing you haven't shown us is the very interesting kind of hammers, the banner stones.
Right, the banner stone. Well, banner stones, I think you had asked before, hey, what's a banner stone? Well, a banner stone is an archaic artifact. They're usually attributed to the archaic period, which is from 8,000 BC up to about 1,000 BC.
BC.
And it's
Let's
all
take notice. BC.
BC, right? So that's they are often used. They have a hole drilled through it, and it's a carefully shaped stone with a hole or penetration through the middle of it, and they're very symmetrical. There's a lot of different styles of banner stones, 30 some odd styles that have been found, and these are the ones from that location. This was in the Valentine Museum collection, and they had it labeled as a stone figurine. They didn't even know it was a banner stone, and I took one look at it. I'm like, that's a banner stone. They're like, what's a banner stone? They didn't even know what it was.
Is the common feature of a banner stone, Vince, the receptacle or female end for some other implement, right?
Yeah, so it's a they all have a hole drilled through. Some of them are perforated partly through, partway, but the common feature is that perforation in the middle, in the symmetrical shape.
And this one is very special because it's not only shaped as a crescent moon, it has an angle on it that allows to calculate positions of the moon, correct?
Correct. Yeah, this there's a line on it. It's drawn at this angle shown, which is the minimum lunar declination at midwinter. It's called a
4.3.
lunar standstill in archaeoastronomy. Lunar standstill means this angle of the where the moon will rise at midwinter. It happens once every 18 years, and the engraved line or the line that was in the stone was at that same angle. So it's literally the minimum lunar angle at midwinter.
Can you zoom in? Because I'm not sure if people can see the line that is engraved on the banner stone.
Well, oh, sorry. Well, I've got it shown here with the angle depicted. Sorry, there. But it's this angle is there's a line in the stone. I've drawn it over with this angle just to show that
Sure.
line is there. But it's it's something that's engraved in the stone and it's part of it.
Gotcha.
It's just that the first time I'm just saying this because the first time I heard you say this, I was not seeing the line. So I thought, oh, they are depicting this from the curvature of the banner stone, and then I realized there's actually a line engraved
Right.
in the banner stone. When you have the lower part of the angle, that's actually a line engraved in the stone that shows us the actual angle.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
It's in the stone. I mean, but it would be like vertically hung, like on a string, so that they'd be looking at this and looking at the angle, either on a string or something vertical. So the central perforation is the horizontal. I mean, the vertical angle, and then this angle of the lunar declination is what's engraved on there.
They would hold this on a
If you put it on a stick against a fixed background, right, where you knew that was the predictive angle, then you would know when to look for that object, right, in the sky, the
Right,
moon or whatever.
right, and
Yeah.
it's an important archaeoastronomy that they had knowledge of, and they would have depicted it for that reason, like a true record
We know that
of minimum lunar declination.
that astronomy takes hundreds, if not thousands, of years to perfect. So that alone would make them very ancient in terms of development of this particular type of technology. That or diffusion, because if someone comes along and explains them, right, then they get,
You're back to the same
yeah.
problem, right? That they've got an A and a B of options here, and neither of them fit their narrative. And that's why archaeoastronomy, anything related to it, even though it's evident all around us in every earthwork we can find, right, in this continent and in these pieces you're showing, archaeoastronomy, as Ricardo points out, designates that there is a certain amount of history behind these people from the point of this artifact. Because in order to have just this information about this moon, how many generations? It occurs what, every 18 years? How many generations did I have to accumulate this knowledge in order to formulate this predictive stone right here in front of me, right?
Right.
So
And these
anytime I
two.
accept yeah. I mean, anytime I accept knowledge of these heavens over extended periods of time, I have to attribute to these people extended periods of time of observation. And no matter what you find in the archaeological record, once you accept that these people have that lineage of knowledge, it blows nearly every narrative out of the water
Yeah, but
because precipitated from that is generation upon generation upon generation of
it's the
observation.
way that archaeologists present this to us, because to them that might be obvious, but somehow it's not mentioned. It's the same discussion that we have about Göbekli Tepe. That culture didn't start there. That culture must have hundreds to thousands of
It's
years
same.
before
Yeah.
that in order to create that with those alignments, with that particular knowledge, right? So it didn't
Right.
start there as we are
Which is why
presented.
they don't like it to Göbekli Tepe, and they don't like what Vince is showing us here,
Sure.
because it all precipitates a much longer heritage of
And
knowledge.
I'm sure that this 18-year period where this alignment could be observed would represent something significant. Otherwise, they wouldn't take the trouble to measure it. So,
Right. It's the minimum lunar declination every winter. There's a maximum lunar declination. I mean, these are important archaeoastronomy angles. And just like they had Stonehenge and Woodhenge was found at Cahokia Mounds. So that shows that they were taking the time to meticulously record these angles. There's evidence that they built this Woodhenge, and it has posts at these angles in the Woodhenge as well. So they carefully recorded the angles. They knew about it, and it's something that it would have taken many generations to perfect and to record the history. And so I mean it's proof of written language and knowledge transfer from one generation to the next.
Yeah, it's a computer in stone when you think about the fact that we would need our iPhone or some modern app to do this today. This is the equivalent of, yeah, it's a computer in stone. It is a technical
yeah, but
tool right
we are
here.
told that
Scientific
we
item.
cannot speak about diffusion because it is diminishing the culture that is
It
presented.
doesn't have to be
But we were
diffusion, right?
one
It doesn't.
culture. There
Yeah.
isn't a globe that is separated and not connected. It's a one culture, and things very quickly spread all over the place and were developed according to their own culture and style. But it's a one knowledge, a one culture that we see spread all over the world at the same time. So and that's why they are so adamant to contradict and say that we cannot say that they learned this from. They didn't learn it from other. They are that culture that then
They are,
stayed and
right.
then changed of course in time. But they are all the same culture because they were traveling all over the globe thousands, 30,000 years ago, right? You see, the Azores were occupied in the very least at the late Neolithic. They're already crossing into the middle of the Atlantic, in the middle of the Neolithic. So
Wasn't a far hop from there. This is a
And
really cool piece, Vince. I
and
appreciate you, Ricardo, calling him back to these.
thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's exciting to talk about it. And just Bannerstones have always been a mystery for archaeologists too. They weren't sure what they were for, and there's a lot of different theories. Some say they were for Alatul spear thrower, like that, as if they made this thing so carefully so they could hurl a spear farther. And there were studies about that, like saying it really didn't do anything to help the spear accuracy or distance. But some archaeologists still claim to that, and I mean, still cling to that idea of Bannerstones
Judging
being
how they
spear
think.
catapults. Right. They think that they think one way. They won't look at other possibilities, and it's very insular. Not wanting to learn about other cultures. And I mean, I think that this proves that they had knowledge of archaeoastronomy, and that they recorded it and knew it, and the time frame it would take. I mean, like we said, the Gravatian all the way through European in arrival. I mean, this is many thousands of years of. This is an ancestor shrine, and it's all accumulated together, and it's thousands and thousands of years of artifacts that were at one site. It's like the biggest mega museum of culture and ancestry in Eastern North America, or the world itself, and significantly, that it needs to be studied and it needs to be looked at further.
So, Vincent,
Yeah, I think it's huge, Vince. It's like you pretty much said, I'll shorthand it. We found their Smithsonian, you know? We found something that was culturally relative for these people so far back they probably didn't even remember the exact origins on much of it themselves.
so
Right.
so
Right.
so for us to close in the remaining minutes, what are your next steps? What are you doing right now, and what do you foresee that you will be able to do in the near future?
And I mean, what I'd like to do is write an article about this. I know that it would be great to write a book, but I don't think it's possible. There's just so many layers to writing a book. But I think an article with a really good summary of this, with peer review, hopefully going into Nature magazine or something like that sort, to say, hey guys, we followed up on the Valentine discovery and the Charles Rao article from 1880. We now know some more information, and this is what we know. I think that would be great to have it on the record in a scholarly peer-reviewed journal. To get to that point, I think the Smithsonian is the last piece of information that's needed. Is that we need to carbon date those at the Smithsonian, or get another sample at the Smithsonian confirmed for the date of manufacture, or last thermoluminescence, something that we can show
A
that.
piece that is not insensitive as the ones that were tested. They were just insensitive. So,
Right.
but and
Ricardo, we
let me just ask. So, and you
go ahead.
yourself, or is there any? Have you found along your research and contacts? Is there any academic, or do you have the credentials that will allow it to be considered to be peer reviewed?
I mean, I think we would need to get a peer review done, in after before submitting the article. Usually it's done if we submit it to Nature magazine, they would send it to several peers to read it and review it. Um, I mean, usually you need someone who's in an academic circle to endorse it, like a college or university. University of North Carolina would be great if they could do that, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're just not interested, even though they have a third of this stuff.
And in terms of academics, is anyone that is looked at your research and wants to help, or not at all?
I haven't gotten any responses from academics. I've sent this to multiple places and asked them for their information or their comments, to get some feedback, and just nothing. It's like a brick wall.
The only
They don't want to.
the only one that answered you is when you ask for examination of the skull, right?
Well, that's right. That skull was from the Valentine Museum, and that was a picture from the book Mount Pishka that Mr. Valentine had
But
published.
have you sent it to any expert that could actually try to analyze it?
Right. Oh well. I think was our friend uh, Catherine is her name. I think the bone specialist and specialist with NAGPRA. She's the one that responded about the skull. She said the skull was dated either late prehistoric or early historic, and that it's a 40-year-old man. And she said that it was the result of post-mortem damage, but the cause of death was likely due to dental infection. She said there would have been horrific dental infection from the lower jaw.
Okay. Jason, do you want to ask anything
So,
more?
well, no, you were asking Vince about papers, and naturally, what popped into my mind was the institute, and the fact that we have some fledgling sort of enterprises working on documentaries. For instance, mine Finding Mobilla, right? But that is something we could, start kicking around the old brainstorming can with Vince on possibly, getting something produced of a visual format if he hasn't already in the documentary sort vein, putting our various talents into the pot.
Yeah, it's easier to
Um,
write a script than to write a book.
right, right. And these are all talents, Vince. We've sort of got already on board in the institute. A couple of editors of varying degrees, and me and others who use film to express what we're already finding. So that's just something I throw out there as a creative seed to plant that we might start, kicking around.
That'd be great. I'm
Yeah,
excited about that opportunity, and I think
yeah.
it'd be terrific to have a
Well, we've
documentary.
got we've got these correlations, Vince, that I can't help but keep seeing, right, of DeSoto. And even if while everybody's arguing over everything else, we can at least start digging into to these first-hand accounts that are verifying both of our pieces of work. Go
Yes.
ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's great. That's a great idea. I would really um, appreciate that opportunity, and would love to take that step to do a documentary on it, and have some, and work with the Institute of Natural Philosophy on this, and have a good article, or documentary about it.
Yeah. Yeah, just a seed, Vince. No doubt. We're just a team over here, and we're trying this with various different topics that each of us have been putting forward. And this is a natural fit. It's kind of one of the reasons you popped in my mind
And
when Ricardo and I were looking for somebody to chat with.
and it would fit in the series that we are producing now. So yeah.
Correct. Real people just out here trying to bring truths forward and what we're running up against. And so the answer to that is why don't we all just get together, put our talents to use, and say we don't need you to decide reality for us. We've got it right here.
Right. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
let's talk about it.
And
Yeah, yeah, move forward. That's just you asked me, Ricardo, and that's the
Yeah,
idea that I just wanted to
sure.
throw out while I had it. Yeah.
So, Vincent, do you wish to tell everybody again where they can find you? And I think you wrote already articles on this. There is a magazine with your article too.
right, we did publish an Ancient American. There was a magazine article published this year. Um, the Ancient Kentucky Historical Association published some of the information as well, as a follow up.
Almost done.
We do have 3D modeling of the artifacts as well. But see, these are the Ancient American magazine, was published in June of 2025, and yeah, it'd be great to have a additional follow up. This kind of summarizes the dates of the finds, and early to late estimate with thermoluminescence. Uh, the future goals, yeah, to have a documentation to share the information and just learn about it. I mean, the goal is to share information so we can all solve the mystery and put all the pieces on the table, and contribute to the knowledge that we have about this country. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity to talk with you all
Well,
about it
well,
and
it
work.
was it was our
Oh,
honor.
thankful for you, Vince. Yeah, and if we're gonna wrap, I mean, the one thing I can say is everybody, please go look into what Vince is putting forward. There is a reason. Again, I reiterate when Ricardo and I were speaking on people we could chat to, that yours was literally the first name I sent him. Because I say it like this, Vince. I think America is going to be the key. I'm going to steal Graham Hancock's key, the title of his last book, "The Key to Earth's Lost Civilization," right? And I really think not only is your work bumping up against mine in the sense of the natives, right, and DeSoto particularly in that terrible encounter, that happened, but also of this much older society that we're starting to see glimpses of that existed here on this continent. You know, my work in the rocks takes a look at the before that catastrophe, but all of this stuff you're putting forth, man, I think gives us a real strong echo of people that are tied to that time frame, to that ice age time frame in so many ways. So I think it's important for many reasons.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's fascinating.
So, Jason, tell once more where everybody can find you.
Sure, Jason Huffman, username Shaman711 on X. That's going to be 711 underscore Shaman711 on YouTube and Rumble. And here at the Institute of Natural Philosophy, where we are doing our best to ensure we get our best future by bringing forward the truth of our past. As my daughter stands here and looks on, the reason we're doing it is them, man.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for staying with us to the end. My name is Ricard Calvario. You can find me at X at Ricard Calvary 1. And please look out for our published material in Institute for Natural Philosophy at Academia Edu. We also have another podcast, this time by two wonderful ladies, that is called Universe Unveiled. And you can find them on X under the same name. And you have where this is going to be published, that is the Institute for Natural Philosophy at YouTube. So thank you very much for your time. Vincent, thank you very much once more for being with us. It was amazing. And until
Vincent, let's set up you on the girls platform, maybe the Universe Unveiled. I definitely want to see you chatting some more and do what we can, whatever you want, to help get this out there. And we'll talk more about this apparatus we're putting together to start making some homemade documentaries.
absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Until next time.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.